If I look a little cranky for this episode 7 of Viva PPC, it's because I am. It is getting increasingly difficult to remain optimistic that the ever increasingly tyrannical government is ever going to take a step back and start respecting individual citizens' rights. Episode 7, Viva PPC, documenting my journey running for the People's Party of Canada for the riding of Westmount and Notre-Dame-de-Grâce. And this episode is entitled Vaccine Passports, because although this is a provincial issue for the time being, it seems to have the support of the federal government, and it is shocking is an understatement. Predictable is depressing. But in Quebec today, François Legault and Dr. Horacio Arruda are unveiling their vaccine passport plan, and to say that it's dehumanizing would also be an understatement. Basically, in order to access certain types of businesses, for the time being, I think it's restaurants, cafes, and gyms, you're going to be required to show proof of double vaccination with a QR code on your phone that gets scanned in order to give you access, to grant you access to businesses. It creates an obligation on the business to scan other humans, and it creates an obligation on humans to reveal personal medical information in order to gain access to private enterprises' services. For the time being, the government is saying that it's only going to apply to privileges, as if to live in a free society where you can enter a business is a privilege. But setting that aside, for the time being, the government is saying that it only applies to privileges. I'm telling you now, I'm predicting it now, this is soon enough going to apply to essential services. And the reason why I say this is because the logic for why it should apply to essential services, if it applies to anything, is stronger than why it should apply to privileged services like gyms and restaurants. It should apply, if it applies to anything, to essential services, because if you're unvaccinated going into a hospital to get treatment, that, if there is a true risk, is probably exactly where you want to make sure that people heading into are double vaccinated, and if they're not, that alternative treatment facilities are available. But this is dividing society in a way that is beyond unhealthy. It is dividing society in a way that is beyond unconstitutional. Let's just say people are free to get the vaccine on their own, and full disclosure, I'm fully vaccinated. This is not a question of me being stubborn about insisting on some treatment that I'm going to get. I might protest willingly any establishment that requires a QR code to access the institution. I might protest that. I got double vaccinated. The People's Party of Canada is not anti-vaccine. It is about respecting the fundamental choice of the individual to decide to get the vaccine or to not get the vaccine. Maxime Bernier has made his public statement about his decision. That is his decision. I have made my public statement on my decision not to try to influence anybody or deter anybody, because I think it's necessary for full transparency. This is not a question of me complaining that I'm going to be deprived privileges. I am right now fighting for the people who will be deprived privileges, because I don't think anybody should be compelled, coerced by the government to get a vaccine under these circumstances. For this virus, this vaccine, specific to these circumstances. And to say that we're creating a second-class citizen, to say that this is invasive, to demand medical information from an individual. When I was getting my second dose, I spoke with a woman who was passing the street asking what was going on, asking about the vaccine. And she told me she didn't feel comfortable getting the vaccine because she suffers from anemia and blood clots. And this was a discussion that she initiated. I would never have asked this question. And now you realize that for people who have a medical condition for why they cannot, should not, or do not feel comfortable getting a vaccine, they're going to either be denied privileges in a free and democratic society, and I should put free and democratic society in scare quotes. They're either going to be denied privileges, or they're going to have to reveal potentially personal medical information, anemia, blood clots. Maybe that's not embarrassing medical information to reveal to explain why you haven't been double vaxxed. There could be other more embarrassing medical information that someone is going to have to reveal in order to explain why they're not vaccinated so they can get privileges in Quebec society. This is not a free and democratic society. And setting aside the fact that this vaccine passport is being unraveled and implemented in the absence of any meaningful, in the absence of any legislative process, period. Like, have we forgotten what democracy is? It's not because a government is democratically elected that they can then do whatever they want once in power. There is a legislative process for this. There is a public debate process for this. So evidence can be made to justify what is now becoming essentially a legal requirement. There is a legislative process that it seems our government in Quebec couldn't care less about. And how? Well, I guess, we've been in a state of emergency for 2 years now, so no time for passing things through the legislative public debate process. It's an emergency after all. So you get to do whatever you want. Constitutional rights be damned. Legislative process be damned under the pretext of an emergency. These emergency provisions were set up because typically the emergency would be so pressing that one would not have time, the government would not have time to pass these measures through the standard legislative process. If you don't have time to do that, entering your second year, you're doing something wrong as a government. And yes, I think the François Legault government is doing something wrong as a government. And instead of having the federal government raising hell at these provinces, imposing vaccine passport restrictions, instead of having that, you have the government basically buying off support within the province, the federal government of Trudeau, promising no strings attached billions of dollars to the province, whereas they should be intervening and they should be raising a stink at provinces violating the constitutional charter rights of Canadian citizens. And unfortunately, nobody's doing that out there except for the People's Party of Canada. I'm going to be at the vaccine passport protest on Saturday. From what I understand, Maxime Bernier is going to be there, and we're going to say hi, and we're going to talk, and we're going to express our discontent and our dismay with what is going on. It's a provincial issue. It is a charter issue, and to that extent, it is an issue that affects all of Canada, because if anyone thinks that this is going to be a one-off in one province, I am unfortunately a little pessimistic that that is going to be the case. We need to start raising our objections loud and clear at the provincial level and bringing them to the federal level, and maybe trickle down power from the federal to make sure that the provinces actually respect the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. All right, with that said, episode 7, if you want to support my candidacy, support the movement, share this, share the messages, share the words so that the people out there know there is only one party in Canada fighting for the constitutional rights of the citizens, and that is the PPC. All the support links are in the pinned comment. That's it. Episode 7 end. Stick around. I'll be vlogging Saturday. So I'll see everyone there who's in Montreal. Peace.